5 NBA FanDuel value plays to target on 131.21 of the keys to finding success in daily fantasy basketball is uncovering potential value plays. If you're looking to roster a stud player or two, you need to consider squeezing in one of these lower-priced options into your lineup. Let's take a look at 5 players who can help fill in the gaps in your lineup. Jalen Brunson, PG, Dallas Mavericks, $3,600. One of the more popular players on the slate is going to be Jalen Brunson. It's time to eat some chalk. With Luka Doncic ruled out for tonight's game against the Houston Rockets, we should see Brunson as the starting point guard. This is a rather safe assumption since the last time Luka missed games, in late December, Brunson was the Dallas Mavericks starting point guard. We have him projected for 29 minutes tonight, set to produce 28.2 FanDuel points, making him the best point per dollar value on the slate. Tonight's game against the Rockets has an over-under sitting at 235.0 points, the second highest on the slate, making this a clear game to target for fantasy production. We will also see the Mavericks playing up in pace since they are 24th in the league, while the Rockets are the second fastest team in the league. Brandon Clark, PF, Memphis Grizzlies, $5,200. With Jaren Jackson Jr. out due to a suspension, we should see Brandon Clark in the starting lineup as long as he plays after missing shoot-around this morning. The Memphis Grizzlies are on the road to take on the New Orleans Pelicans in what is the fantasy game of the night, with a total sitting at 241.0 points. A massive over-under will draw plenty of ownership, and a cheaper player in the starting lineup will certainly be one of the most chalky plays. We have Clark projected for 33 minutes and 38.0 FanDuel points, making him the second best value player tonight by our numbers. This shouldn't come as a surprise since both teams are in the top 6 for offensive pace, and the Pelicans are allowing 45.2 FanDuel points per game to power forwards this season, the 9th most in the league. Trevor Ariza, SF, Portland Trail Blazers, $4,300. Trevor Ariza is in line for plenty of minutes tonight, but how productive will he be? Ariza has played 3 games with the Portland Trail Blazers since being traded last week, and his production has been all over the place. In the 3 outings, he has played 35, 31, and 38 minutes, posting 37.4, 10.3, and 33.3 FanDuel points. The minutes being above 30 each night is awesome, the production bouncing up and down is not. We know that minutes equals money in NBA DFS, which is why a player like Ariza is worth considering. He is just above $4K in price and is playing consistently over 30 minutes. Ariza's time on the court isn't always productive, but the game environment against the Los Angeles Lakers tonight should prove to be valuable. The over-under is sitting at a very solid 229.5 points, while both teams are in the top 12 in offensive pace. Michael Porter Jr., PF, Denver Nuggets, $4,800. The Denver Nuggets are on the second night of a back-to-back, and they have some value options. With a few injuries still going around for the Nuggets, they have been using a lot of their depth in recent games. This has brought former first-round draft pick Michael Porter Jr. to center stage, and he is crushing it right now. He posted 12 points and 12 rebounds last night against the Utah Jazz in what is becoming normal production for him off the bench. Over his last 8 games, he has scored in double-digit real-world points 7 times, while finishing with at least 8 rebounds 7 times. On the season, he is producing 1.13 FanDuel points per minute and is still under $5K. With Porter putting up 25 or more FanDuel points in 7 of his last 8 games, you can look to him confidently when you need a bit of salary relief. Norman Powell, SG, Toronto Raptors, $4,800. Norman Powell posted 24 FanDuel points in 25 minutes last night, and he can do that again today. With Marc Gasol out for the Toronto Raptors, their starting lineup is changed along with their rotation. Powell was the first player off the bench for Toronto last night and is playing when Fred VanVleet is not on the court. Last night we saw Powell put up 12 field goal attempts, 7 of which were 3-point tries. Double-digit shot attempts off the bench are always valuable, and he doesn't need to compete as much for offensive usage in the second unit. Powell and the Raptors are up against the Detroit Pistons, who come in allowing 42.0 FanDuel points per game to opposing shooting guards, the 12th most in the league. FanDuel Daily Fantasy Basketball Helper. Friday 1/31/20. If you're new to daily fantasy basketball, maybe you started your DFS journey during the MLB or NFL seasons, or maybe basketball is your sport, and this will be your first year giving it a shot, you're in for a treat. The NBA scene changes on a week-to-week, day-to-day, and, depending on injury news, even a minute-to-minute basis, making every slate a unique one that requires an ever-changing approach. With so much changing so quickly, we're here with plenty of tools to help you out. We have daily projections, a matchup heat map, a lineup optimizer, and a bunch of other great resources to help give you an edge. Daily fantasy NBA is very reliant on opportunity, so you'll need to make sure that you're up to date with key injuries. Our projections update up until tip-off to reflect current news, we have player news updates, and the FanDuel Scout app will send push notifications for pressing updates regarding your players. We'll also be coming at you with this primer every day, breaking down a few of the day's top plays at each position. Let's take a look at who you should target on today's main slate. Point guard. Let's kick it off with a big injury. Luka Doncic is out due to an ankle sprain. That'll open up a ton of usage and minutes for the Dallas Mavericks. Jalen Brunson, $3,600, has a 22.2% usage rate and a per-minute average of 1.01 FanDuel points without Doncic on the floor. Brunson played his minutes into the 30s back in mid-December when given the opportunity, and he gets a pace-up matchup with the Houston Rockets at near minimum salary. Eric Bledsoe, $6,100, and the Milwaukee Bucks could benefit from an injury to their star, as Giannis Antetokounmpo, $11,600, is listed as questionable with a shoulder injury. Bledsoe has a stellar 33.7% usage rate without Giannis, which would rank him 6th on the full season. Kawhi Leonard's is 33.8%, for reference. Bledsoe also is productive in that sample with 1.48 FanDuel points per minute. Monty Morris's, $4,300, Denver Nuggets are also thin. Jamal Murray, Paul Millsap, and Gary Harris are listed as out. Morris has played 35.1, 33.9, and 32.1 minutes over the past 3 games and boasts an 18.9% usage rate without those 3 on the floor. The ceiling hasn't been massive, but he remains cheap for his role. Shooting guard James Harden, $10,100, has been underwhelming for some time now, but played 38 minutes on Wednesday despite a leg injury. We should be able to bank on the minutes again. There's modest blowout risk, as the Rockets are favored by 9.5 against a Mavericks team without Doncic, but Harden could get an opportunity to get things flowing again. Dallas is just an average defense against combo guards such as Harden. Chris Middleton, $7,200, has a 33.8% usage rate and a per-minute average of 1.38 FanDuel points when Antetokounmpo is off the floor. Middleton played 35.9 minutes last game without Giannis and took 26 shots, en route to 51 points and 70.0 FanDuel points. The matchup is very different than it was then against the Washington Wizards, but the Nuggets are only 14th against scoring wings. Delon Wright, $4,200, puts up 1.12 FanDuel points per minute when Doncic is off the court, and that'll work at his salary. Wright is coming off a 15.7-minute 5.50 FanDuel point dud, but had 14 points and 12 rebounds the game prior over 27.1 minutes. We can trust a bounce back with the added opportunity from Doncic's absence. Core plays: James Harden, Chris Middleton, Delon Wright. Secondary plays: Zach Lavin, $8,300, Drew Holiday, $7,600, Fred VanVleet, $7,000. Tournament plays: Devin Booker, $8,900, Dylan Brooks, $5,600, Bruce Brown Jr., $4,300, Kyle Anderson, $3,600, small forward Giannis Antetokounmpo, $11,600, and LeBron James, $11,200, top the small forward list, and we know Antetokounmpo could miss. James, then, would own an elite ceiling relative to all other small forwards. It's more of an opportunity cost situation than a ringing endorsement for James, who has only twice surpassed 50 FanDuel points in his past 7 games. Anthony Davis, $10,300, is questionable as always, though, and James' numbers go through the roof with Davis on the bench, 36.2% usage rate and 1.57 FanDuel points per minute. Tim Hardaway Jr., $4,300, and Dorian Finney-Smith, $4,100, can benefit from Doncic's departure. Hardaway, 0.77, and Finney-Smith, 0.73, average poor per minute production, despite very different usage rates, 25.2% for Hardaway Jr. and 13.7% for DFS. Both could clear 30 minutes at cheap salaries. Trevor Ariza, $4,300, won't really see a minutes boost with Carmelo Anthony out, but that's only because he's already logging a ton of them. Ariza has played 35.8, 32.0, and 38.3 minutes in 3 games with the Portland Trail Blazers. Ariza has twice broken 30 FanDuel points and 20 actual points with the team, 37.4, 10.3, and 33.3 FanDuel points with 21, 7, and 21 actual points. Power forward Anthony Davis, $10,300, is questionable as always, but if he plays, he's in a full tier of his own because no other power forward is priced above $6,500. Davis's ceiling is a full 20 points higher than any other power forwards tonight. If Davis sits, then Kyle Kuzma, $4,300, would slot into core play territory as a starter. Kuzma has a 24.9% usage rate without Davis and gets minutes in the mid-30s without him. Kristaps Porzingis, $6,400, puts up 1.37 FanDuel points per minute on a 28.6% usage rate without Doncic, and his price has been cut due to a limited role, fewer than 27.5 in 5 straight games. However, he can pay off with the elevated efficiency, even if the minutes don't jump up. Serge Ibaka, $5,700, played 33 minutes last night but has been on a tear of late. 33.4, 20.0, 35.0, 42.0, and 37.3 FanDuel points in his past 5 games. Ibaka is cleared up for a safe role with Mark Gasol and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson out. Ibaka owns a 25.6% usage rate without them. The Detroit Pistons are 12th among 14 teams playing tonight in power forward defense. Center Jaren Jackson Jr. is suspended for this game, opening value for all the Memphis Grizzlies. Jonas Valanciunas, $7,000, separates from the field a bit. He has a 23.8% usage rate and averages 1.31 FanDuel points per minute without JJJ. The New Orleans Pelicans and Grizzlies have the best overall game environment of the night. After Valanciunas, at least until we get a lot of news, it's a pretty clustered tier of can't complain options. Andre Drummond, $9,600, Clint Capella, $7,200, Hassan Whiteside, $8,300, DeAndre Ayton, $8,200, and Nikola Jokic, $9,800. Nobody particularly separates from the pack and all rate out pretty similarly in my range of outcome model when adjusting for price. Ayton would get the nod if I had to pick because Aaron Baines is out, and Ayton has played 38.6, 30.5, 26.0, 39.6, and 29.2 minutes over his past 5 without Baines. 3 NBA FanDuel studs to target on 131.20. Basketball is the most consistent sport for daily fantasy purposes. A top slugger in baseball will have his fair share of 0 for 4 days, and an elite fantasy football player is at risk of having games where his team's offense as a whole is shut down. A high-priced NBA stud is generally going to get his, though. With so many possessions in a game providing opportunities to produce, top fantasy basketball options will be posting high scores just about every night. While this consistency puts us in a good position to identify top plays, it also means you can't afford to miss when you're paying up for someone. Even with strong value plays in your lineup, paying up and getting a dud is likely going to leave your lineup drawing pretty close to dead. Let's get right into it and look at which top players should be the focal points of your lineups tonight. James Harden, SG, Houston Rockets, $10,100. James Harden struggled to the tune of 36.0 FanDuel points as he returned from injury in his last game, but his workload was still encouraging. The Houston Rockets appear to have no concerns about his health as he was on the floor for 38.3 minutes. Harden's certainly in the middle of a slump right now, but a 9-game skid shouldn't be enough to convince you the sky is falling. Harden exploded for at least 74 FanDuel points in 3 of the 4 games before this cold stretch, and even with his recent struggles, he's averaged 42.9 per game over the last 9. Posting a .401% effective field goal percentage over his last 9, compared to .533 for the season and .541 last year, positive regression is going to hit for Harden. When you factor in the huge workload he's getting and his league-leading average of 57.0 FanDuel points per game, it's hard not to like rolling the dice on Harden while his salary is this low. Ja Morant, PG, Memphis Grizzlies, $7,400 at $7.4 K. Ja Morant needs just 37.0 FanDuel points to return 5.0 per $1,000 of salary. That's a mark we've seen him hit 5 times in his last 8 games and 6 times in his last 10, averaging 37.8 per game in those 10. That is to say, in a neutral matchup, this is a pretty fair price for Morant, maybe a little on the cheap side. The New Orleans Pelicans are no neutral matchup, either. Checking in 25th in defensive rating while playing at the number 6 pace in the NBA, the Pels have surrendered the third most points while also giving up above-average marks in both assists and rebounds per game. Kristaps Porzingis, PF, Dallas Mavericks, $6,400 at $6.04K. Kristaps Porzingis isn't in the usual stud price range, but with Luka Doncic ruled out, Zinger is the most expensive player on the Dallas Mavericks and is set to produce like a stud. Porzingis has a 24.1% usage rate and averages 1.04 FanDuel points per minute in 762 minutes played with Doncic on the floor this season. With Doncic off 327 minutes, those averages jump to 28.6% usage and 1.25 fantasy points per minute. He should also be in for some increased efficiency tonight against the Houston Rockets, who have allowed the 7th most points and 8th most rebounds per game to opposing teams. Porzingis's minutes are a bit of a concern, as he's yet to play 30 in a game since returning from an injury absence on January 21. The Mavs will likely have to lean on him harder